how they transformed into the bustling, kind of chaotic modern city you see today?
Because the physical structures we are analyzing today, they weren't just, decorative boundaries. They functioned as the literal skeleton of the city.
Right, like they dictated everything.
Exactly. They dictated who lived where, how they interacted, and, honestly, how they survived. They reflected this really complex Hindu and Muslim heritage, and more importantly, they were a physical manifestation of the intense security anxieties of that era.
Well, to understand the modern hubs that Jalandhar is known for today, we really have to visualize this 12-12 blueprint.
I really do.
And it starts with reconstructing these 10 to 12-foot high walls that used to wrap entirely around the city limits.
Just a massive continuous barrier.
Yeah, and inside and outside of that barrier, you had a very deliberate demographic and architectural split. So on the outskirts, pre-1947, you had the 12 Bastion.
Right. The settlements on the outer ring.
Right, and these were primarily built and populated by the Muslim community in Pathans.
Yeah.
But then inside the main city walls, you had the 12 Cuts, or Mohallas, which were primarily Hindu and Sikh-dominated residential areas.
Exactly. And connecting and controlling the flow between these two separate worlds were the 12 gates or the darways.
So essentially the coats were like gated communities, but on steroids.
Oh, absolutely, on steroids. I mean, those 12 gates were massive security checkpoints. They were designed in this beautiful but functional, traditional Mughal-era architecture.
Right, so we're talking big archways.
Imposing brick archways, thick wooden doors that were heavily reinforced with these giant iron studs to, prevent battering from elephants or rams.
Yeah.
And they had dedicated guard postings.
Wow.
Yeah. The research points to distinct landmarks like the Lahore Gate, Valmiki Gate, Neela Mahal Gate, and Jara Gate. Each one served as a highly monitored funnel into the inner city.
And the sources single out Mai Hiran Gate as perhaps the most famous of the 12, right?
Yeah.
Largely due to the local lore surrounding it.
Yeah, the lore there is fascinating.
Because the name is connected to a traditional tale about a woman named Mai and a diamond, like a Hira.
Right.
It adds this great layer of mystique to something that was, at its core, a military-grade border crossing.
It really does.
Yeah.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire design of the inner city, the Coats, it was entirely rooted in defense.
Because the word cut literally translates to fort, right?
Exactly. Fort or secure enclosure. These neighborhoods were developed primarily during the 17th and 18th centuries. And, this was a period in Punjab's history where outside invasions and regional skirmishes were just a constant looming threat.
You didn't build for aesthetics.
No, you built for survival.
Well, looking at the schematics of these coats, it sounds less like a modern residential neighborhood and more like a series of interconnected bank vaults.
That is a perfect analogy, yeah.
Like they were designed specifically to trap intruders in tight corridors. You have these streets deliberately built so narrow that two horses couldn't possibly ride side by side.
It's tactical urban design in its purest form.
Wow.
Because if an invading cavalry breached that main 12-foot city wall and, say, they forced their way through Mai Hiran Gate, their momentum would immediately die inside the coat.
Because they just get stuck.
Exactly. The incredibly tight, twisting streets, full of blind corners and dead ends, it would completely break up their numbers. Plus, the ground floors of the homes had these high, windowless outer walls.
Oh, so you couldn't even break into the houses easily.
Right. It was an architectural strategy meant to neutralize a fast cavalry charge and turn it into slow, grueling street-to-street combat, which obviously gave the local residents the upper hand.
That is wild. So every single night when the sun went down, the physical boundaries became absolute.
Totally locked down.
Every cut had its own main gate, and those were heavily guarded and locked tight. You have the Hindu and Sikh populations locked inside the coats and the Muslim populations outside the walls in the bastion.
Right.
But this raises a massive logical contradiction for me.
Okay, what's that?
Well, let's unpack this. If a city is heavily fortified and its two main populations are literally locking each other out every single night, how does the city actually function as a unified society during the day?
Yeah. Right. That is the genius of it. Mm-hmm. The answer lies in what we can basically call an invisible supply chain.
Okay.
Because despite the rigid architectural boundaries and, the separate religious practices, neither community was actually self-sufficient.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Their daily survival was tied to this incredibly sophisticated economic symbiosis. They lived geographically separated, sure, but economically they were entirely entwined.
So if these two groups are running a joint economy, but they're physically locked away from each other at night, Where is the actual work happening? Like, who is making the goods?
The physical production was almost entirely localized outside the walls in the Bastion.
Okay, so the outskirts.
Right. These outskirts were the manufacturing hubs of historical Jalandhar. The Muslim craftsmen residing there specialized in weaving, leatherwork, ironsmithing, the actual physical creation of goods.
They are the makers.
Exactly. They had the technical skills in the workshops.
Mm.
But, a craftsman cannot survive on inventory alone. They need a market. They need a distribution network.
And let me guess, that distribution network lived inside the fortress.
You guessed it. Inside the cots lived the merchants, the landlords, and the traders, primarily from the Hindu and Sikh communities.
Okay, I see where this is going.
Right. They didn't produce the raw goods themselves, but they possessed the capital, the regional contacts, and the commercial networks necessary to actually sell those goods.
That completely reframes how we should look at this walled city.
It really does.
I mean, they worshiped separately, they retreated behind different defensive walls at night, but when the sun came up and those heavy timber gates swung open, they were essentially a single, highly compartmentalized factory.
That's exactly what it was. The craftsmen in the Bastion created the textiles and goods, and the merchants in the cots bought them and distributed them across Punjab and eventually the rest of India.
Wow.
And what's fascinating here is what this tells us about human behavior. Shared economic survival almost always overrides physical walls. The survival of the wealthy merchant depended entirely on the skill of the weaver outside the wall, and the livelihood of the weaver depended entirely on the commercial reach of the merchant inside the wall.
So we have this perfectly balanced, humming economic engine. But in 1947, the fuel for that engine, the very demographics of the city, is suddenly and violently removed.
Yeah, a massive upheaval.
Because the partition of India didn't just draw a new border, it completely severed Jalandhar's 12 supply chain.
The demographic shift fundamentally erased the societal structure we just discussed.
Right.
The Muslim artisan class that inhabited the Bastion largely migrated to the newly formed Pakistan, and simultaneously a massive wave of Hindu and Sikh refugees arrived from Pakistan seeking safety in Jalandhar.
And they just moved into those vacant spaces.
Exactly. They moved directly into the spaces left behind in the cots of the Bastion. So that unique economic symbiosis of the weaver outside the wall and the merchant inside the wall, it vanished almost overnight.
Man, with the supply chain broken and the city suddenly absorbing tens of thousands of refugees, the old physical boundaries simply couldn't hold.
They didn't stand a chance.
The population pressure was just too immense. The historical records show the city rapidly expanding outward into brand new residential sprawls, places like Model Town and Lajpat Nagar.
Yeah, massive expansion.
But what actually happened to the original 12-foot walls? I mean, did the government just bring in bulldozers and knock them down?
Well, it's a combination of state-led infrastructure expansion and, frankly, desperate practical scavenging.
Scavenging?
Yeah, think about it. You have thousands of refugees needing immediate housing. An imposing 12-foot brick wall surrounding the city is suddenly seen less as a security necessity and more as a massive free quarry of pre-fired building materials.
Oh, wow. So they just took the bricks?
Sections of the walls were dismantled literally brick by locals to build new homes. And then the rest was aggressively cleared by city planners to make way for widened roads and commercial zoning.
So the physical fortress was essentially cannibalized to build the modern city.
Exactly.
So, okay, if I travel to Jalandhar today, what is left of those 12 magnificent Mughal-era gates? Am I going to see archways?
Unfortunately, no.
Mm-hmm.
The physical gates have been entirely swallowed up by the modern maze of the city.
That's a shame.
It is. Today, when longtime residents use names like Maiharan Gate, Balmiki Gate, or Phagwara Gate, they aren't referring to a physical structure with heavy doors and guards.
What are they referring to?
They're referring to busy, chaotic traffic junctions.
Just intersections.
Yeah. The name survived, but the architecture was just paved over.
So if I am sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic at the Maiharan Gate Chalk, listening to horns blaring and looking at neon shop signs, I am idling my car on the exact spot where a massive defensive checkpoint used to be locked down every night.
Exactly. The history is quite literally under your tires.
That is wild to think about.
But, the imposing perimeter is gone, but the internal blueprint stubbornly remains.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, if you walk through the neighborhood of Kut Kishan Chan today, the 150-year-old layout is hiding right in plain sight.
Okay.
The lanes are still incredibly frustratingly narrow because, remember, they were designed to stop horses not accommodate modern sedans.
Right, the tactical urban design.
Exactly. And you can look past the modern power lines and the commercial signage and still see the old Havilas, those massive, intricate courtyard mansions where the wealthy merchants used to live.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, they've been repurposed for modern commerce now, but the bones of the fortress still dictate the flow of foot traffic today.
It is like urban archaeology. You just have to know how to peel back the modern layer.
Exactly.
But while the historic gates and walls disappeared due to the sheer practical force of population growth and urban expansion, there's another extremely famous landmark in Jalandhar that was transformed by something much more mystical.
Ah, yes. The legend of Sukha Talab.
Yes, and here is where it gets really interesting. Sukha Talab literally translates to dry pond, right?
Right, dry pond.
And it is this massive geographical depression located near Kishanpura Chowk. And the local lore behind this site is just fantastic.
Quite a story.
According to the folktale, ages ago, this area was a massive, incredibly deep body of water. And one day, a sadhu, an ascetic holy man known for his severe self-discipline, came to the edge of the water to fill his kurandal, which is a traditional metal water pot.
Right.
But as he reached down, he lost his grip. The pot sank into the deep pond and was lost forever.
And the historical narratives passed down by residents suggest this sadhu took immense pride in his asceticism and his spiritual power.
He wasn't very forgiving.
No, he didn't view the loss of his pot as a simple accident. He viewed it as a profound personal insult from the water itself.
So in a fit of absolute rage, the sadhu curses the pond. He decrees that from that moment on, the pond will remain completely dry forever. It will never hold water again. Now, normally when you hear a folktale like that, you sort of categorize it. You assume there was a natural geological shift that dried up a local lake, and generations ago, people just made up a myth to explain the changing landscape.
Exactly. A myth to explain the geography.
But fast forward to the year 1984.
Yeah, the 1984 floods are where this ancient myth collides directly and somewhat inexplicably with documented municipal history.
In 1984, Jalandhar experienced massive, devastating rainfall. The entire Kishanpura area was submerged. I mean, the floodwaters were dangerously high, threatening homes and lives.
It was a crisis.
Right. So the local administrators and authorities scrambled to respond. They brought in heavy-duty industrial water pumps to clear the flooded residential streets. And they obviously needed a place to dump all that water.
Naturally.
So they look at the massive empty basin of Sukha Talab. Logically, it is a huge, deep depression in the ground. It looks like the perfect natural reservoir.
I mean, the municipal plan made perfect engineering sense. Just pump the excess water into the dry basin to save the surrounding neighborhoods.
But the authorities pump thousands and thousands of gallons of floodwater directly into this cursed pond, and the water just vanishes.
It just disappears.
It doesn't pool. The water level doesn't rise a single inch. The ground absorbs every single drop as fast as the industrial pumps can spit it out, and the basin remains completely, stubbornly dry.
Yeah.
Longtime residents watched this happen and viewed it as absolute validation. The sadhu's curse was real.
They saw it with their own eyes.
It's like Jalandhar has its own geological black hole. I mean, does the water just hit some massive hidden subterranean aquifer? What is the actual mechanism down there?
Well, from a geological and hydrological standpoint, it is highly probable that the basin sits directly atop highly porous sedimentary soil, or, like you said, a fast-moving subterranean aquifer that simply drains the water away much faster than it can accumulate on the surface.
Okay, that makes sense.
But honestly, the geological mechanics aren't the most important takeaway from Kulwinderstein's research on Sukha Talab. The truly profound element is the human adaptation to the site.
Right, because how do the residents adapt to a giant, unfillable pit in the middle of their city?
Exactly, because you have a massive plot of land that is culturally recognized as cursed. It refuses to function as a natural water source.
Right.
In many cities, that land would just become a wasteland, an abandoned dirt pit used for illegal dumping, completely avoided by the locals. But the residents of Jalandhar didn't abandon the dry land, they reclaimed it.
Wow. What did they do?
Over the years, the community actively transformed the space. They built the Sri Sid Baba Balaknath Mandir right there in the basin.
Oh, a temple.
Yeah, and they added a Shiv Mandir. They pooled resources and constructed a massive 3-story Janjgar, which is a community hall specifically designed to host weddings and large social gatherings.
That is beautiful. They took a cursed, barren pit and engineered it into the social heartbeat of the neighborhood.
They really did. And today, the transformation is entirely complete. The cursed pond has been meticulously cultivated into a lush, beautiful park.
No.
Yeah, if you visit Suka Talab early in the morning or in the late evening, you will find hundreds of residents gathering for walks. People are laying down mats and doing yoga in the exact spot where the sadhu supposedly delivered his curse.
That is just incredible.
It is a profound example of a modern community looking at a historic site, accepting its quirks, and basically reclaiming it for modern peace and wellness. The curse dictated that the land could never hold water, so the people decided it would hold their community instead.
The curse said it couldn't hold water, so the people made it hold the community. That perfectly encapsulates this entire journey.
It really does.
Because we started for you, the listener, in a strictly regulated mathematical city, a fortress of 12 bastion, 12 cotes, and 12 gates.
A very different world.
We explored a city rigidly divided by heavy timber doors and 12-foot brick walls, yet intricately united by an invisible humming supply chain where the weavers outside and the merchants inside kept each other alive. We watched those ancient walls get dismantled for spare bricks under the massive demographic shifts of 1947, transforming into the chaotic traffic junctions of the modern era.
The Mehiran Gate Chuck.
Exactly. And we ended up standing in the middle of a cursed black hole pond that refused to hold 1984 floodwaters, but now happily hosts morning yoga sessions and temple bells.
Yeah.
It is a massive reminder that history isn't just something you read on a brass plaque in a museum. The city you interact with today is just the latest, thinnest layer painted over a very dramatic architectural canvas.
Absolutely. And, as you consider those layers hiding beneath your feet, I want to leave you with one final fascinating paradox drawn from the historical sources.
Oh, I love a good paradox. Lay it on us.
Well, we've spent this entire deep dive analyzing imposing walls, locked security gates, in a notoriously dry pond, but consider the very name of the city itself, Jalandhar.
Okay.
According to linguistic history, the name translates to Jal, which means water, and Anthar, which means inside. Jalandhar, water inside.
Wait, literally, the city is literally named Water Inside.
Literally. The name signifies the rich, fertile land holding the water between the two great rivers, the Sutlej and the Bees.
That is amazing.
But this raises a wonderfully ironic point.
Right.
A city literally named for its geographic ability to keep water inside is perhaps most famous among its longtime residents for a legendary mystical pond whose entire identity is based on keeping the water out.
A city named Water Inside with a black hole pond that stays bone dry. I love it. So, next time you find yourself stuck in traffic at Mehiran Gate or squeezing through the impossibly narrow lanes of Kot Kishan Chand or stretching out for morning yoga at Sukha Talab, just ask yourself, what other invisible histories are you standing on right now?